Ah, Merry Christmas! Glad you come.
More than once in modern media, Frank Capra's 1946 film It's a Wonderful Life is described as a sad movie. In Joe Dante's Gremlins, Billy's mom calls it just that while chopping onions in the kitchen.
Mom, is something wrong?
No, it's a sad movie.
It's a Wonderful Life. Yes, I've heard of this.
In the show Friends, Phoebe Buffay has this to say about the film.
It just kept getting worse and worse. It should have been called It's a Sucky Life, and just when you think it can't suck anymore, it does.
It's a Wonderful Life is also commonly referred to as the best Christmas film of all time, but it's not what we would typically consider a Christmas film today. The majority of It's a Wonderful Life doesn't even take place during Christmas, yet nonetheless, it's synonymous with the holiday. The film chronicles the life of George Bailey, played by James Stewart. We watch his life from a young age and the defining moments within. He falls in love with a woman named Mary, played by Donna Reed, and becomes the manager of his family's building and loan, which finances mortgages for the town of Bedford Falls in upstate New York. After a series of unfortunate events, George is brought to a breaking point and considers suicide. He is saved by an angel named Clarence, who is tasked with convincing George that death is not the answer, by showing him the world if he was never born, and emphasizing the good he has done for his community.
Every man on that transport died. Harry wasn't there to save them because you weren't there to save Harry.
George comes out of the event a man more appreciative of his life. Filmmaker Benny Safdie describes It's a Wonderful Life as stretching and pulling every emotional fiber in your body. There's hardly an emotion that isn't at least touched upon in the 130-minute runtime. We laugh, we're swept up in the romance and joy, but most importantly, we cry. We even feel anxiety and fear. Some of the best films are ones that put us through the ringer emotionally.
Come on home, quick. Your father's had a stroke.
Where we go on a journey full of difficulties and strife. Christmas films in particular use these scenes of emotional intensity to have its audience truly appreciate the holiday jubilation that will come later. Without it, the film will only leave a sickly sweet feeling in the viewer, one that will, in short time, be forgotten. While it received mixed reviews, I'm a big fan of 2000's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I was about 9 when I first saw it, and what always stuck with me through the years was how sad I felt in the theater watching the younger version of the Grinch climb Mount Crumpet alone after his meltdown in his classroom, sparked by being embarrassed by his classmates. His sniffling and declaration of his hatred for Christmas broke my heart, and through it, I could understand how someone could end up so angry. This scene also helped me appreciate the moment the Grinch has a change of heart, which also grows 3 sizes in the finale. Holiday films that left me with the same feeling are few and far between. Films like Bad Santa, Home Alone, and A Christmas Story come to mind, but it feels like after the mid-2000s, this trend disappeared, or at least has not been handled as well in the subsequent decades. There is a darkness missing from modern holiday films, a trip through the melancholy that juxtaposes the bright lights of festive cheer. I would argue this missing ingredient is why a truly memorable modern Christmas film is few and far between. Great Christmas films also allow us to reflect on our previous year, all of its ups and downs, with our characters, and their ups and downs. With It's a Wonderful Life, we are able to do this on a level no other film has done before or since. One scene encompasses all of this. The scene comes as the second act low point. George arrives home to his family after spending the day wildly searching for money that has gone missing under the watch of his Uncle Billy. His wife, Mary, is decorating the tree with their oldest son, Tommy. Janie, the daughter, is practicing Hark the Herald Angels Sing on the piano. This music contrasts with George's mood and creates a simple yet effective emotional tension, while also foreshadowing the jubilation of the film's final scene. The family asks if George brought home the Christmas wreath, and George says he forgot it at the office. One more piece of straw to break the camel's back. George tries to play off the dark cloud hanging over his head, waving off any questions of concern, but George barely has it together. The youngest son, Pete, shows off his Santa mask, and George scoops him up and starts to break down into tears. Mary looks over and sees George weep. Her expression is captured in one of the greatest close-ups ever put to film. Tears quietly fall down George's face as Peter places tinsel over his head. Mary mentions the family coming over and George bursts out.
Family? I don't want the families over here.
Mary tries to talk to George, but he's past talking. He's mad. He's frustrated beyond anything. There's nothing that will calm him down. He's short with his kids, scolding Tommy for bringing up the neighbor's new car,
You should see it.
Oh, what's the matter with our car? Isn't it good enough for you?
You're steady.
yelling about Janie playing the piano.
Must she keep playing that?
He yells about his drafty house and their lack of money.
Why, we don't all have pneumonia. Drafty old barn of a place. Might well be living in a refrigerator. Why do we have to live here in the first place and stay around this measly, crummy old town?
He laments the town he lives in and the fact that they have so many kids.
You call this a happy family? Why do we have to have all these kids?
Lines of dialogue that would cut through any working parent's heart. George hears about his youngest, Zuzu, running a slight temperature and the doctor being called, yet another expense, which results in him yelling at Zuzu's teacher on the phone until she cries. On his way up the stairs to see his youngest, George pulls up a piece of the railing and almost throws it in a rage, barely holding himself back. One can't help but be awed at the brutal authenticity of Stewart's performance here. The scene culminates in George lashing out at his family. The piano cuts out, and in the cold silence, we see George destroy the models of a bridge and skyscrapers that he dreamed of one day building. He tries to apologize, but his anger boils back up. Anger at himself that he can't send out anywhere but back at his own family.
George, why must you torture the children? Why don't you?
He leaves the house ashamed. For some, the holidays can be a balm for the stockpiled frustrations we've built up over the last 11 months. A time to let go of our strife and enjoy family, friends, and be merry. But for others, the holidays can be an overwhelming experience. It can be a trigger for people who see all the joy around them, but can't feel any of it inside themselves. People like George. He's so weighed down from the stress at work, living in near poverty, his self-imposed failure as a father, the inability for him to achieve any of his own dreams, and the town he can't escape from. This 7-minute scene is the most important one in the entire film. It brings all of George's frustrations that he's been able to keep under control most of his life into the forefront in an overwhelming sequence. As an audience that has witnessed the entire life of George Bailey, we understand his emotional and mental state as a character, but we also see ourselves in George. Building up to this scene, the film's first 2 acts can be interpreted as an encompassment of the entire year. We start with George as a boy, fresh as New Year's Day and full of resolutions.
I'm going out exploring someday, you watch, and I'm going to have a couple of harems, and maybe 3 or 4 wives.
He's going to take over the world, and he has the gung-ho attitude to do it. We then watch George blossom into a young man, like a flower in the springtime, falling in love with his soon-to-be wife, Mary.
You want the moon? Just say the word and I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it down.
In the heat of summer, we see his dreams begin to evaporate. His father passes away, and he must take over the Bailey building and loan. He and Mary even use their honeymoon money to keep the building and loan alive during a banking crisis. George and Mary take up residence in the old Granville house, a rundown shack they used to throw rocks at. And through a montage, we see the chill of fall enter George's heart. We then arrive to the malaise of winter. George is worn down by the circumstances of life, as we are worn down by the months of the year. Thankfully, like George, many of us are reinvigorated by the Christmas holiday.
Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas, George!
This essential scene can be felt by the audience in ways ranging from universal to personal. We can pick and choose which conflicts we connect to without losing any of the impact. But there is also a specific aspect that, while not explicitly stated, is one that could only have come from the time It's a Wonderful Life was produced. David Lynch mentions in this video about how James Stewart considered quitting acting after serving in World War II.
It's a Wonderful Life was made, I think, in '46, after the war. And Jimmy Stewart had been in the war and for years. And when he came out, he didn't know if he had the stuff.
Stewart was commissioned a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army Air Force in 1942. His primary tasks were to star in recruiting films and attend Bond rallies. But Stewart wanted to contribute to the war effort. From 1944 to 45, Stewart piloted B-24 Liberator bombers over Germany, volunteering for every mission he could. He was eventually grounded from flight missions for his PTSD issues, described as flak happy back in the day. When James returned from the war, he was not sleeping, plagued by nightmares from seeing planes in a squadron gunned down. He had clearly lost weight and was depressed. Many military websites and blogs have written about It's a Wonderful Life, and how they have seen themselves in Stewart's performance. In particular, the moment when George is praying in the bar has been cited by many as James Stewart playing more himself dealing with his trauma than George Bailey. The film has since become an inadvertent symbol of PTSD for veterans, and George, a character they can connect through. Film can be an escape, but it can also be an outlet for our emotions, for the audience as well as the actors, a way for us to vicariously grapple with complex feelings within ourselves. In films, we get a chance to see a character dealing with issues we are dealing with as well, and empathize, even cry. The most famous scene in It's a Wonderful Life is its final one. After George has had his breakdown, after Clarence shows him the horror-riddled alternate reality where he was never born, George returns home to find the town has banded together and pooled funds to save the building and loan and keep George out of trouble. The warrant for his arrest is ripped up. Everyone sings "Hark the Herald Angels Sing," and we hear a bell ring. Clarence has received his wings. It's a scene we can all see coming from miles away, but the emotions come at you like you could have never guessed the ending. Year after year, millions gather in front of their televisions and feel their throats tighten, their chests swell, and tears fill their eyes. This finale would never achieve this kind of emotional payoff if not for the intense scene that precedes it. Our holiday joy is earned through embarking on one of cinema's most relatable characters' darkest moments. Because of it, though, George's joy becomes our joy, just like his frustrations were our frustrations. It's why this film is a Christmas staple. One wonders why, for being a film so many reference as one of the all-time great Christmas films, is the thematic formula not repeated, aside from the occasional sitcom homage.
You wish that you'd never kissed her. I can show you what would have happened if you never did.
What are you, like a genie?
Genies aren't real. I'm an angel.
Are we so adverse to sadness in film today that we cannot fathom seeing a character go through what we can all relate to? It's a shame we don't have more films that take this emotional journey. While it's fine to sit back and relax during the holiday, how can we ever process the previous year with conflicts so fixable they lean into trivial? In many ways, It's a Wonderful Life is like free therapy. Experiencing George's journey enables me to appreciate my own life, and for many years, this film has felt like a reset button. I'm reminded to hold on to my dreams and see my blessings where they make themselves known. I'm reminded that it is indeed a wonderful life. Merry Christmas, everyone.